Hey, I'm Dante St James. We're going to be taking a look at 4 ways to get clients to book and pay for your services, but also to look at some of the behind the scenes stuff that you may need to look at as you restructure your business away from giving away a lot of your time to wanting to get paid for it. And some of the systems are going to help you get there as well. I'm Dante. I'm coming to you from freshly locked down Darwin. We've just gone into a 3-day lockdown literally this 3 minutes ago. So I've been madly rushing around the last hour to make sure I had enough food in the fridge. And yes, I've got more than enough toilet paper. Yes. Why is it that one thing that everyone goes for? I just really do not understand it. Let's get this screen shared and get you underway. Now, this is a live webinar, as you noticed with my audio problems. So if you've got questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask as you're going to get some tips or to ask a particular question in the Q&A or through the chat. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, please feel free to pop your questions in the comments below and we'll get back to those as soon as possible. And while you're on YouTube, either in the Business Station or my own Dante St James channel, please pop a subscription on there because we'd love to be able to deliver you more of this stuff every single day of the week as it's coming through. So let's get it underway. A quote first from Maya Angelou, a poet and an activist from the US, the late Maya Angelou: all great achievements require time. And this is going to be the same for you as you transition from a lot of free and very cheap models of business to be able to, charge more for what you're worth and get paid what you're actually worth it. Because let's face it, you're worth money. We don't do this stuff for free. It's a business, not a charity. What we're going to cover today is the mindset that comes between the free and the paid. We'll look at migrating your free work over to paid work and some strategies for getting your clients to, value your time a little bit more than they do now. I'll give some examples of how I had to do the same thing, where it's hurt, where I made mistakes, where you could hopefully skip over those mistakes and get much better at it as well. And some systems that you can use to get paid along the way as well. First up, this is brought to you by Business Station and Digital Solutions, part of the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Australian Government Initiative. Big changes happening with that, and I'll explain some more of those towards the end of this webinar, and a new logo even coming through there. Also in partnership with Regional Development Australia in Brisbane, Queensland, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. This will be shown on YouTube later on. So if you have to pop out quickly to go and, panic buy things at a supermarket, if you're in the Northern Territory, well, you can do that. Just pop back into to Business Station or my own YouTube channels, and you'll be able to search for this particular one nice and easily, usually loaded up within 1 to 2 hours of this going to air as well. And a bit about me, if you need to know a bit about my background, I'm a bit of a chronic overachiever. It's one of the ways I deal with my own imposter syndrome, I suppose, is I go and get lots and lots of certifications. Started off with, the big kahuna is doing marketing and business information systems at the University of New South Wales, then going on doing my master's in business information systems as well. I like data. I like predictability. I don't like taking guesses made on feel when it comes to marketing. I'm very much about making decisions about the data I can see and the patterns that are emerging, rather than just going, this looks better in purple than pink. Let's go with that. I've also done a lot of stuff with the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK remotely, and I do occasional micro certifications on things like cybersecurity and marketing through unknown and different channels through TAFE New South Wales. Working with Facebook's lead trainer program, their global lead trainer program, as well as the Australian community trainer program as a marketing associate and planner as well. And I've got a ton of other certifications with that I won't go into today, but also working with, the Digital Solutions Program, Be Connected program, the new business assistance with NICE in the Northern Territory, and Google's Digital Springboard program. God, he can talk about himself, can't he? Thankfully, I'm now past all that. We're onto the part that's all about you, which is learning about the mindset behind free and paid services as well. So let's take a look. In economics, there's what we call the free rider problem. And I remember this from year, would have been about year 11 economics, I think. The free rider problem is where, for instance, there's a little bit too many people, a few too many people taking resources for free, and someone else is having to pay for that. So it's a very big economic problem. It happens in things like welfare programs. It happens through things like, access to things like public transport, all those kind of things. But where it really affects economies and small businesses is that there's often there's more free riding happening than there is paid riding. And the paid riding is not paying enough to fund the free riding, and the ride in sense is costing the provider something to provide. Think about this from your point of view, right? If you're providing more stuff for free over a period of time where you're going, oh, okay, it's been 3 months and I haven't had a paid client, but I've been very, very busy and doing lots of work and getting lots of exposure. That's great, but at some point, someone needs to be paying for your time. So you're either doing it one way, you're either getting paid clients who are subsidizing the work you're doing, or you're doing like I essentially did when I first started in business. I side gigged. I had a full-time job, and then I did the Gary Vaynerchuk 7 to 2 principle. So you finish work at 5 with your mainline job, and then you've got a couple of hours to yourself for family, for exercise, whatever you need to do in the evenings. And then at 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. you work again, and you work on your side gig. And I was building websites and doing social media plans and doing certifications and doing more learning. And it was a hard few years of doing that, but it did pay off until I was able to transition out of that model into being full-time just in a business of consulting and working on things like digital marketing. But at some point, that free ride that I'm getting for all the work I'm doing and not making much money has to end. And that free ride was being funded by my full-time job. Most people, that's how they'll free ride their business, through funding it through another channel. For instance, a similar thing could be if you get a free ASBAS Digital Solutions session at the very beginning of this program, the last, maybe say 12 months ago, someone is essentially paying for that. So I still get paid if I have a free session with you, but that's subsidized through a government program. So likewise, the free ride is never really free to the person who's providing the free ride, because they still have to pay for it somehow. This in a small business is quite weird, because an economist will say, well, no business would ever operate under these circumstances where they'll run themselves at a very, very low rate. So they're basically running at a loss all the time. But small businesses like us, we say, yeah, hold my beer, mate. Let me show you how it's done. And we do it. And we end up in big messes where, I guess, and there's got to be at least one person on this call today who's probably in that as well, who's got themselves trapped into doing stuff for free that they're having trouble getting people to pay for. So how do we get trapped in the free trap? We get trapped through the promise of the try before you buy. I guess so many pieces of software and services, Netflix, for instance, anything like that, that gives you a period where you can try it out for free, and then you then pay for a service after that, is something you need to be worried about, because at some point someone needs to start paying for that. And I know that there's people I know who have never paid for Netflix in their life. They just start up new email accounts and they just get a new Netflix account every 2 weeks, 2-week trials for the last, 6 or 7 years. That's a lot of work to go to. It might also be that trap where you're saying, well, I'm new, I need a portfolio of work. I need to be able to prove that I'm able to do this. That's a trap as well, and I'll show you why soon. And the other one, which is the I'm new, I need the exposure. Probably the trap that anyone who's ever worked in the arts or entertainment has ever fallen into, is that nobody really truly values your work unless you're super famous. And even then, they don't want to actually pay for you. No, of course not. Why pay for what you should be getting for free? Entertainment's free, isn't it? Maybe. So the try before you buy trap comes from free trial. So just try my service out for a short while and we'll see if it's for you. And that free initial consultation that you offer, which is, let's have a discovery call, we often call them, to see whether my service is for you in a quick free consultation. The problems though that pop up from this are that a very, very small percentage of trial customers will ever convert to be paid customers. And if you've ever run a subscription service, a course, an online learning program, you'll see this in spades. You may give away that first module, or give someone a free 7-day trial to your learning platform. The problem is though, that very, very few of those people who give you that trial are firstly going to finish the trial and actually do anything with it. But secondly, very, very few of them are ever going to convert to the paid part of that. They really just got in to get the free information. They didn't really want to buy your program yet. But yeah, you've got a little bit more exposure. You've got a little bit more knowledge of your values and your brand and your properties and your products and services in the market because of that. So that's a pretty positive thing. Problem number two is that once someone's had their initial problem solved, often in their first free consult they do, and that's in that discovery call, they won't need to pay you for extra time because they've got the answer they needed from that one free call. This is where, I suppose, it takes a lot of discipline to transition from giving away all your services to free and then suddenly charging for them. It's taking that free call. Now, free discovery call at its very basis is not a problem solving call. It's a problem identification call. So if you're like, this happens to me all the time. People come in, they want that free call. I've got an organization now who basically just books in free appointments with me all the time. And I've now had to cut them off because they're just, yeah, let's just say they're just making a joke of it. They just want to get their free 15-minute call. And I actually do make sure those free calls are 15 minutes long, no more than that, just 15 minutes. Because in 15 minutes, you can't really solve the world's problems, can you? You can get an idea of what might be going on in their organization. You might get a basic idea about what that person is and what they're looking for and whether they can afford your services. But beyond that, 15 minutes is not really giving you a lot of time to work out how to solve someone's problem. So most of these discovery calls are quite undisciplined. They don't have an in and an out that's planned for them. So if you're able to go into a discovery call, a 15-minute discovery call, that's the first thing you got to do. You got to put a time limit on that thing. And that's not just for the sake of you not giving away all your time for free. It's also for the sake of them understanding, oh, good, it's only 15 minutes. Good, I can fit that into my day. If you go, let's have a 1 hour discovery call, that's too long. That's too long to give someone for free. You are worth $80 to $280 an hour when it comes to what you're worth, your skills, your background, your experience. And if you're giving away 3 or 4 of these calls a day, you're essentially giving away well over $2,000 or up to $2,000 a day. You might be just throwing away by giving away your time for free. So it's costing someone something. While you're not making that money, it's costing you money. It's like, one of the first things I outsourced in my business was bookkeeping, because it takes me hours to do bookkeeping properly. And I can have all sorts of automated systems that may help that along a little bit, but still comes down to it. It takes me longer at a higher rate, at my full rate, which I like to charge out. It's costing me too much to do that as a bookkeeper, but a bookkeeper is actually cheaper per hour than what I am. So I can get them much cheaper to do that job, in the same way that I will pay for a cleaner in my apartment. The first reason I pay for a cleaner is I hate cleaning. But the second part of that is that I'm too expensive to be doing cleaning. At my rate per hour, it costs me too much. I'm losing out on that rate every hour I'm spending cleaning. But if I spend, $60 an hour on a cleaner, that's way below my rate. So I'm actually essentially saving money by spending money, because in that hour, I'm either able to rest so that my hours become more viable in the next day, or I'm able to do the work myself and do my own work myself and actually make money during that hour. So bear that in mind. This is all about you having some sort of value upon what you're worth per hour. If we're looking at the portfolio thing, where things like you're giving away free photos and free videos and free websites in order to get referrals to friends and colleagues, it's so fraught with danger. This is where, say, for instance, you're a photographer, you're starting out and you're going to take photos of a friend's wedding, and they get very, what people are like with weddings, they're very entitled. And even if they're getting it for free, they've got all these sorts of, stipulations, and you must take photos of this and this and this and this way, and it's got to be this many, and you're going to be there all day and take photos of everything. And they're like, oh man, you're getting this for free. There's a lot of stipulations for a free job. Beggars can't be choosers. But choosing beggars do exist, and they are really always looking for free photographers, free videographers, free bands, free music, people who build them free websites, people who do free social media for them, all in exchange for the magical referral to the friends and colleagues that they're going to provide. Oh, I know tons of people in this town. I can refer them through to you. You do a great job for me, man. I'll tell everyone about you. You can imagine where this is going. And then you also want that initial set of clients for testimonials, like that you aren't attracting them to pay for you. So if you get those free clients, you can at least like whack their logo on your website, so you can actually, and it'll show a testimonial on your website to show that you have got some kind of portfolio of work. But the problems are that the referrals that they promised you rarely ever happen. And if they do, they told that person usually that they got it for free. Or they say, oh no, he or she doesn't cost that much. You know, it's nice and cheap, because they have no idea what your real rate is going to be. So the people who come through those referrals are usually the poorest quality referrals you could ever have. Secondly, where you've got testimonials and client logos on your site, that particular point of difference on your website makes up such a tiny little overall sales strategy for your business. I can have all the logos all over the site. I've worked with some massive companies, ones that I'm not even allowed to say that I've worked for, because I've done them through a third-party organization, and there's non-disclosure agreements involved, but I'd love to be able to put those on there. The problem is though, by putting those logos on your site, some people are very impressed by that, but most people really don't care, because they're small businesses themselves, or they're just individuals themselves. So if you say, oh, I've done this work for Myer and David Jones and Kmart, and then they're going, well, that's great, but I'm like a little small work from home mum business. I'll never be able to afford you. And by putting impressive logos all over your site, you're suddenly pricing yourself out of the small business market, or the small person's market, the individual, everyday mum and dad in the suburbs market, by simply saying, hey, I've done all this fancy work. Well, that's telling them that you'll only work for other big businesses and other fancy high-priced contracts. So there's lots and lots of things you have to consider before you have the right mindset to do this, this transition from free to paid. And then if you're new and you need exposure, things like bands and performers and MCs who are doing free work at events for clout. You're playing at an event where you might be maybe the backup band, you're the support act for the band, or you could be the comedian who is not the main comedian who's getting paid, but you're like the backup support act that coming on, a couple of sets before them. Or you could be deciding that, oh yes, I'm the hairdresser who's going to do some free hair at this hair show, and I'm just working under someone else and getting experience. Or you might be a speaker. This is one thing I do a lot, is speaking at conferences for free. And you provide your time free, so you can be in front of a crowd. Like, it's great to be in front of a crowd of people to get them to know who you are. That's the essence of becoming, I guess, an influencer, or working on your personal brand. The trouble with both of those, though, is that no one really ever remembers the support act. They only remember the main act, so that the exposure you're thinking you're getting isn't really exposure at all. And second, are your potential clients actually in that audience if you're going and speaking there? Speaking in front of things like the Chamber of Commerce are only particularly good if you are a business-to-business operator. If you're operating in a case where you're selling things to other businesses, there's a pretty good chance that the kind of businesses you want to be in touch with are at that event. Then that's a great investment. But let's just say you're selling, I don't know, you could be selling consumer goods. You could be selling homemade makeup. You could be selling imported cotton sheets that you're getting from Egypt. Well, then you've got to ask the question, are those people who I'm speaking in front of, are they the kind of people who are going to buy the stuff that I'm selling? Are they the kind of people who already have an interest or some kind of relationship with what my products and my services happen to be? And if the answer to that question is no, then you probably shouldn't be speaking for free at that conference. Unless, of course, that it's contributing to something like personal brand, where you're wanting to be seen as an authority, a credible expert, or some kind of influencer. And if that's your business model, that's great. That could be a great idea for you. But just getting up and speaking in front of things because you're there, or just getting up and speak up in front of things because you are the person who, you need that validation from a crowd applauding you, that's probably not the best way of dealing with that. There's other ways of dealing with that and not going to cost you the time and the effort to go and speak in front of large groups of people. So there's a bit of a reality of today's customer. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I did a pricing webinar that's all about how to price yourself as a small business. And one of the realities that came out of that is that today's customer isn't what we often think they are. When it comes down to it, things like Facebook Marketplace, for products at least, you can see some people doing services like, not so much in Marketplace, but in buy, sell, and swap groups. Facebook Marketplace taught us that we should be able to get what we want for free or pretty close to free when we want it. So we can go on there and pretty much we've got a bunch of people who are trying to get rid of their old crap, and we should be able to pick up that old crap for free. And if we don't, we just skip it. Oh no, $20 now, it's too much, mate, too much. So that's taught us that not to really value things much these days, to pay as little as possible. Then Amazon and eBay and those guys taught us to always go and check for a cheaper price online before we buy a product at the shops. Or we go and see, oh, this friend of mine's making this beautiful cultured pearl jewelry. So I think, oh, I'll go and look at that. She's selling it for $399. That seems pretty reasonable. Let me just go and quickly check online to see what else is there. And you realize you can get the same thing for $25.95 at on Wish, for instance, and you go, oh wow, okay, well, that's not cheap at all, I won't be buying that. And then Amazon gave way to Kmart, and Kmart here in Australia has taught us that pretty much anything that's a gift or a homeware or something you're going to put in your living room or your bedroom or your bathroom, you can get for about $7. I literally bought online the other day a sheet, a duvet cover set, so a doona cover set, and pillowcases. So 2 pillowcases and a doona cover for $8. And it's actually beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful print and all that with native flowers and all that sort of thing over it. It's very pretty. It was $8. And that's kind of crazy. Like, why would you necessarily spend more for that unless you were going out and looking for status or looking to show people how fancy your bedroom is? Let's face it, not many people see my bedroom. I can count it on one finger how many people saw my bedroom in the past 3 months. So we've devalued everything down to the point where everything has to be cheap, except for things like food delivery services. For some reason, we really overvalue those. It's taught us that the expectations we had of pricing pretty much is chuck them out, because convenience is something we're willing to pay more for. I will pay 30% more to get McDonald's delivered to me than what I would to actually walk I literally live about 200 meters away from a McDonald's store. I could walk there and back in a couple of minutes. Like, it's just ridiculous how close I live to McDonald's. And yet I would still have it delivered here at an $8 extra charge and a higher rate for all the food, just for the convenience of only having to go downstairs, still having to walk about 50 meters to get to it. That's the kind of stupid thinking that goes. We value things very, very differently. When it comes to services, 56% of the decisions that are made on buying purchases are based on price alone. So when people go out there, they hear about your service offering, they go, okay, so this person consults for $280 an hour. This one consults for $90 an hour. Yeah, I'm going to get the $90 an hour. But 44%, so you're looking at roughly, almost 50-50 here. 44% of service purchases will be made based on other things such as credentials, reputation, referral, specific skills that they may have to have, or whatever that happens to be that gets someone across the line to then make a purchase not based on price alone. So this leaves us in a situation where, roughly half the people are going to not want to pay for you if they can get it elsewhere for free or cheaper. And part of the mindset change you'll go through is understanding that that's okay. You don't want to serve everybody. You really don't want to serve everybody, because you cannot serve everybody, and not everyone's going to value your service at the same rate as those who are willing to pay for it. In fact, the people, I've always found the people who get things for free tend to have a lot higher level of entitlement about what they want to get in their free time. It's like this paradox where people who have the money to spend on you don't put the pressure on you so much as the people who don't have the money to spend on you. And it's an interesting thing. I'm in a position now where I'm doing some free things, some low paid things, low cost things, because they're subsidized by governments, whether it's the Northern Territory government, the Australian government, or the Queensland government, or even in some cases, the Western Australian government. And then I'm doing full fee paying stuff as well. It's great to be able to cross refer people from product to product, depending on what I can get them for cheaper. But sometimes there's some people you need to deal with and go, you're going to be a lot of trouble. I don't think I'm going to offer you the cheaper version. I'm just going to say, here's my rate, take it or leave it. And just to make sure that I don't necessarily have to work with that particular client, because I know already they're going to be incredibly difficult and incredibly entitled, and even worse if they get it at a cheap rate. A customer won't generally value what it is you do until they really need it. So let's take, for instance, social media managers. People who are social media managers, they really have it hard, because they're essentially doing something which other businesses just don't want to have to do. They don't really enjoy it. They know they have to do it, but they don't want to do it themselves. And so because of that, they don't really value it. They don't believe in it. So they're not really that willing to pay much for it. So when someone comes to them and says, that's going to cost you $1,200 a month for me to do all that work for you, they're like, yeah, right, man, I was willing to pay you about, $50 a month or something, but I'm paying you. That's ridiculous that you want that much money. But the reality is, they didn't go into it with an idea that that's something which is something they desperately need to do, and they don't ascribe any value to that particular thing. There's no value to something that they don't want to do themselves. But the other company that comes forward and says, look, I just don't have time for this anymore, but I know that social media brings in most of my leads, and my activity on there generates a lot of engagement, and our ads are doing really well and bringing lots of people. I need to put someone in there, and I know it's going to cost me, because I know how much time it costs me as the operator of a business. Then they're more willing to come in and say, oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, let's do it. And they'll get started on those kind of things. Now, that will depend on the size of the business. Some businesses are just way too small to absorb that kind of cost. Some businesses are at the point now where they can absorb that cost and will absorb that cost. That comes down to things in this world are largely cheap. Manufacturing is cheap. Logistics is pretty good around the world. I know it's not been great in the last year and a half or so, but generally things get to you cheap. I order something online, it gets to me within a week or two, even at the very outset, and I'm in a regional area at the far north of the country, and it's still, it takes a while to get here, but it gets here, right? But people in this country and in our economy are expensive. So getting people to do things is expensive. But customers, they don't see the difference between things and people when it comes to your services. They don't really comprehend that, someone who is working in a supermarket, oh yeah, they should be working, they're not really trying to make their living out of being a supermarket. Surely they've got another job that they're doing, but that person may have, kids that they need to pick up at certain times. They may have, people who need to, that are reliant upon them, so they can't work a full-time job, so they need to make the best they can and work in a supermarket maybe. And we'll assume that, oh yeah, they're cheap workers, but people, if you've ever employed someone, you'll know this, people are expensive. They will become the most expensive part of what you do, far more than your materials, far more than your real estate and your rent. They will be the most expensive component of your business. But your customers don't care. All they see is that this little rock here that I was given by someone who makes these, this little rock here, it's just a little rock. Like, why would I pay more for that? They don't understand this little rock was mined in Afghanistan, a place where there now will be no more mining of this lapis lazuli rock. So it's going to be a very rare rock. It's for stone massages. So this little rock that I was given is now going to become an incredibly rare commodity. But I, as a customer, look at that and go, it's a blue rock. I don't ascribe any value to that. I see there's like little gold flecks in it, which is pyrite, fool's gold. And I go, well, yeah, whatever. It's a rock that sits on my desk. But the fact is, it took the man who polished and turned these stones and carved them into the right shapes. It takes him approximately half an hour for every stone to get it just right. To make a full set of these stones, it essentially takes him 8 hours of work to make them. 8 hours that he needs to charge his time out of, as well as the cost of the materials. But a customer doesn't see that. They just see a little red rock or a little blue rock or a little yellow rock or a little black rock. They don't value your time, largely. Most customers do not value your time. They just look at what the outcome is and goes, oh, look, it was a 1 hour session. Why is it $200? Like, seriously, what are you doing? Are you going to give me like a gold watch and a gold pen as part of that $200 I'm paying per hour? They don't realize it's taking 20 years of experience and study to be able to squeeze as much of that information out in just 1 hour. So that value of your time then needs to give way to migrating yourself from the work you're doing for free or very low amounts to something where you're getting paid what you should be getting paid. And when we're doing that, there's a reality check there that your free customers are probably never going to convert to paid customers. If people are getting stuff from you for free, they're not going to want to pay you. They just don't. There's no reason for them to. They will just go along to the next free thing. And we learned that through experiments like Groupon, Scoopon, Living Social, all those daily deal sites that once upon, like about, what would it be, at least 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that maybe 10 years ago when they were really, really big. I think it was 2010 when I went to San Francisco with the CEO of the company I was working with, and we went and heard people from Groupon talking about how they knocked back a $1 billion sale to Google who wanted to buy them, and they were thinking they were really hot, and they were the hottest thing in the market. And like literally 5 years later, no one even knows about these services, because people who go and buy cheap vouchers to go and experience things, to go, okay, I buy one, get one free, they never want to pay full price. That's why Hog's Breath Cafe doesn't advertise on shopper dockets anymore, because they realize that no one's going to go to Hog's Breath Cafe and pay for the full rate for a meal if they're used to getting it for half price. Likewise, even if people in your free or extremely low paid categories do come across and start paying you, they don't want to pay you full rate because they do not value you at that full rate. You can come to them and say, I need $180 an hour to do this. And they'll go, I'll give you 90. So they're not valuing you the same way you need to value yourself, which means you're going to have a problem where you're going to have to draw a line in the sand. You're going to have to come to a point where there's the before the paid and the after the paid. In the dark days of the before the paid, you know, you've got all sorts of things going, loss of money, lots of effort, long nights, exhaustion, and not being rewarded for the work you're doing. But then in the after-paid area, you've got the joy of being paid what you're worth. You've got the joy of working on things you love. You've got the extreme, privilege of choosing your clients. Now, at your stage of business, I know that may feel a bit weird. I know that will feel a little bit strange. It may even feel a little bit foreign, that it may never ever happen, but it actually does get there. And I've done it myself. I've moved away from just everybody being low cost consultations or free consultations to being, yes, I will allow a 15-minute free call, but I'm not just going to let someone abuse that just by booking a 15-minute free call with me just to get some answer about Facebook that they can't get from Facebook themselves. It's like, no, I value my time. You book me in. Now I say that same thing. You get one free consultation, not 15 every time you've got a problem with Facebook. You get one. Even from the ASBAS program, if you've come out of that program in the last couple of months, that first free initial one-to-one booking you got, you're still only getting the one. You know, after that, you're expected to sort of pay what the rate would happen to be, right? Because there's a value that comes with that. We as advisors on that program are not doing this for free. We've got between us hundreds of years of experience and expertise in what we do. So you're tapping into some very, very impressive credentials with the group of people that we're working with. So that at some point you need to pay for that. So there's different migration techniques you want to use. My own technique pretty much went from diverting my free services. So there's free calls, the free, you know, get an hour with me for free, diverting those through to programs that were going to pay me a rate that was more appropriate to my experience. So for instance, I point them to the ASBAS Digital Solutions Program, or to the Entrepreneurship Facilitators Program, or to the NICE program if they wanted to. Just saying, you can't get me for free just through this, but if you go through this program, you'll get access to me, because I would still get paid through those programs. Then I'd offer a low cost access through those programs. So it would be a low cost for a high quality service through the Digital Solutions Program. It'd be low cost, high quality services through NICE. It'd be low cost or free through Entrepreneurship Facilitators, if that's available in your particular town. And then I only then, through my website and through other places, offer my full paid services publicly. I don't now offer people going through to access me through my own channels through programs. I will refer them if they then don't want to have to pay the full price or are not in a position to pay the full price. But I still need to be paid for what I'm worth, for my time. Like you did, you need to be paid for the time you're spending. You have to have some value ascribed to every hour that you work. At the latest stage of when you get used to this and you get people used to paying for you, you'll be at the point where you'll go, and this will sound really, really stupid and extreme, but I'm currently doing it, is that you'll fly business class because you realize that time in a flight, like a 4 or 5 hour flight within Australia. So we're talking about from Perth to the East Coast, or from where I'm in Darwin to Sydney, maybe 4 hours, or Sydney to Brisbane to Darwin, 4 hours. In that 4 hours time, which is usually flown during the day, that's dead time. It's time when I'm not making money. I can't do consultations. I'm not getting paid. So in order to do that, I go, well, if I book myself a business class trip, which is going to cost me a whole lot more than getting a regular economy trip, then I've got to make that worth it. I've got to work on enough stuff, doing proposals and quotes and doing paid work and working whatever I can possibly work on that's going to make me money to justify my hourly rate. I need to make my hourly rate in those 4 to 5 hours I'm traveling. Even if it's just a 2-hour flight to Alice Springs, I have to make money during those 2 hours to justify the cost, the extra cost of that seat. And if I come out at the end of it and I haven't at least broken even on that expensive flight on business class, then I've actually made a loss. And then I have to punish myself for that. I have to work harder to make that money elsewhere. So when you get to the point where you start valuing your time, you go, well, if I'm getting paid at $250 an hour and it's costing me $1,000 to fly 4 hours, pretty much I've got to do $250 per hour worth of work while I'm flying. That's very hard to do in economy class, where you're sort of clustered up like this, trying to type on a tiny little tray table with a tiny little MacBook Pro that you can't plug into power. You've got no room, and there's probably no Wi-Fi working in half the planes in Australia these days. And you've got the person in front of you reclining their chair, so you actually can't even read your screen now because it's being pushed forward because of the person's chair. Or you can sit in business class where you've got your tray table, you've got room to move, you can sort of lay out and you can type away and be quite happy working. It puts a different value on different things. Same way you want people to start valuing your time to pay for you, you then need to start valuing your time that you do in your everyday, flying to see parents, flying to see friends, going on long car trips. You've got to try and say, if it's going to take me 2 hours to drive there, what am I going to do in that 2 hours to help pay for that 2 hours for myself? And when you start paying yourself and you start valuing that time, it changes everything. It really takes it from 2 hours trip in a car or 4 hours flight, doesn't become dead time anymore. It becomes time that you are getting paid for. So it will change your mindset dramatically. So how do you transition? 2 ways you can do it: gradually or suddenly. Gradually, you can raise your rates little by little while reducing your availability for free work. And that's largely what I did. I would gradually, pop it up by an extra $50 an hour. Now an extra little $50 an hour, and reducing the amount of availability I had for the lower paid stuff or for the free stuff. It meant that I couldn't be available to speak as many things. I wasn't able to come and just talk to your organization about social media anymore. That had to be paid for, because my fuel has to be paid for, my time has to be paid for, my expertise has to be paid for. And the sudden way of doing it is where you just snap. You just go, no, there's before getting paid and there's after getting paid. The line in the sand's being drawn, and I'm removing myself directly out of the free stuff into just a 100% paid set of services. But again, the problems are, if you do it gradually, you need to be both offloading the people who don't want to pay and on-ramping new people who are willing to pay. So you're in that sort of weird position where you're kind of you're making people annoyed with you because you have to say, I can't service you anymore at this cost or at this lack of costs. And then you're bringing in new people who are replacing you. So you're doing 2 things at once. You're changing from one thing to another. The problem with the sudden change, the sudden smack down the middle change, is there's potentially some big brand damage. People who are used to being serviced for you are no longer getting serviced by you. They think that you're unreliable. They think that you don't care about them anymore, that you have thrown them all out in order of the mighty dollar. So little do we know, as small businesses, we have to be about the mighty dollar, because we haven't got the mighty dollar. All the other moral and dream and vision and mission aspects of what we do have to be paid for. So we kind of, as businesses, need to be about the almighty dollar. But that sudden change can cause big public relations issues. It can mean that people don't like you. And the problem with that is, I guess, that it's very difficult to rebrand. It's if you're trying to go from a cheap option to an upmarket option, it's really hard to do that. It's hard to go from being cheap to being premium all in one step, or even over a period of time. In fact, it's been really hard for these guys. These guys went from Virgin Blue to Virgin Australia from 2011 through to 2020 when they collapsed. It was a very successful-ish kind of transition, but they did eventually collapse as well. They had to go from being a budget version of very low service, user pays, unallocated seating at one stage they used to have, right up to now where they're a little bit more of a premium option, sort of mid-market, not as high as Qantas, but still not as low as Jetstar, right? So they went through 10 years of transitioning. They did the gradual thing of transitioning from cheap to being a premium service, but they still collapsed because the upmarket experiment failed. There's already an amazing market leader called Qantas that does that. So they became something of a Qantas light. They became a very much locked into a position where the market wasn't 100% clear who they actually were. When I was traveling a lot with my previous employer some years ago, we traveled with Virgin, and it was like traveling with Qantas. It was very, very similar kind of price set. It's just there was more perks at the time with Virgin, so we flew mostly with Virgin. But now that company flies mostly with Qantas because there's stability, there's trust. The trust with Virgin was eroded when they collapsed last year. So they're no longer in the same position they were. They may have taken that gradual decision and then brought it to a point where they're going, okay, we're no longer Virgin Blue at all. All of our planes are repainted. All of our rebranding's done. We're no longer cheeky when we're doing the in-flight demonstrations. We're now very, very formal. In fact, we've got a recording doing it now, where once upon a time, you used to have really fun people doing fun things. It was a casual, fun airline. Now it's purples and reds and blues, and it's much more premium experience than what it was. So it takes time even for the biggest companies to do that. So if you want to get your customers to value your time, then you have to learn how to say no. I hate saying no. We all hate saying no. We really do. But it's absolutely vital because, well, even if it's hard, we all want to be liked. We want our customers to like us. We want the market to like us. We want nice reviews. We want nice recommendations. And it will essentially affect your cash flow. If people are getting used to paying a little bit for what you're doing, and you're suddenly asking for a lot more to pay for that same thing, your cash flow is going to dry up. Only temporarily, though, as you go through that transition. So saying no to low paid work, it's going to seem like your body and your instincts are going to scream against you. They're going to, I remember doing it at the time. It's like, I had to be shown a spreadsheet, which I also did in my pricing webinar last week. This spreadsheet was something that my first employee designed for me, and he designed it up and put it in there, and he said, okay, I want to show you now the damage you do to this business every time you discount someone for something for someone. He said, so, this is what we need to do to break even on producing a website for a business. It was this price, these are the costs of it, and we come out with this very modest margin. That's what helped pay for us as employees and as you as the owner of the business. This is what happened when you charged a much lower cost for that to this particular client. And then he looked at all the repercussions that it did, down to the initial thing was actually a loss, because it cost me more to get the work done in time, paying myself, paying the contractor, paying my employee. We made a loss on that website. I essentially did a charity job. They paid so little for it that it didn't even cover our costs, not even close. And then he said, and the ongoing thing of that is that you're going to do this probably 6 or 7 times this year. So here's the damage, what you're doing to the business after you've done that 6 or 7 times. And it's like, holy crap, I'd be getting paid the equivalent of an apprentice, a 16-year-old apprentice electrician. I'd be getting paid that same kind of wage in my 40s, in my own business. That was a wake-up call. It suddenly went, okay, now I need to start saying no. Now I need to start saying there's a line in the sand. You come across to me and say, oh, yeah, this is my budget. Well, that budget doesn't fit my costs. I'm sorry, you're going to have to be referred somewhere else. You don't have to be an idiot about it. You don't have to be nasty and rude about it. You just say, hey, I can't do it at that cost, but hey, I know someone who may be interested in doing that. If you go over to this person and tell them I sent you, So that's the importance of building relationships. You're going to have to start getting used to the idea that you might need to pass some work to your competitors. I'm great mates with my competitors because we all pass work to each other that we don't want to do. We all understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. There's some overlap in what we do, absolutely. But if I get to a client and I go, that's too big for me, I can't do that at a price effective enough cost for you, but I can send you off to these guys down the road who actually can do that complex work and make it price reasonable for you. Or I go, that's not even, half of what our minimum is that we charge for this kind of project. But I do know someone who's getting up and started that they might actually be willing to do this for you. Here you go, give them a call, tell them I sent you, and I get thanked for the referral. Someone gets their startup on their new business and the cycle goes over and again. We quite often start at the beginning of being very, very low cost and very, very high output. And eventually we have to get to the point where we go, I'm going to have to close down this business and go and get a job again because I'm not making any money. This is crazy. I really need to up my rates. And so desperate times will call for desperate measures, and you'll be forced to start to say no. I know you don't want to say no. I didn't want to say no. I still hate saying no. But at some point, you've got to go, it's either me or them. And at some point, someone needs to pay my bills. So when you're going into that position where you're moving into the higher market, you need to highlight your value. What is your unique selling proposition? What is so special about you that they should be now paying for you or paying a premium to access you? What is your credibility? What certifications have you got? What have you done? Who have you worked with? What are your testimonials and your recommendations and reviews that make you justify with your credibility to move up market at a higher rate? That's what's going to get looked for, because then they line up 20 different people that do what you do. They're going to be looking for what's your edge, what's the thing that you're getting them. Because if you're charging 30% more than your competitor, you better have a good reason for that, apart from just saying we're boutique. The word boutique doesn't mean anything to a customer, by the way. That just seems to mean something to sole traders for some reason. Then clarify your process. Clarify what makes it easy to deal with you. Make the process of booking you and paying for you and dealing with you and working with you really, really seamless. If you're paying $200 for a website, you don't expect to have great service. You're pretty much expecting it's going to be a mess, right? You're going to be months later without a website and it's not just not working for you. If you're paying $3,500 for a website, you expect some level of service and some level of communication. So if you're making a higher amount out of your customers, you need to justify that by making it much more easy for them to deal with you. None of this, oh, you have to call me, and if you call me between this time and this time, because I can't, because I'm picking up the kids then, and I don't take calls on weekends, and if you try to call me on weekend, I'm going to be very rude to you. None of that. None of that. You're a business person now. You're not a mum. In this case, you're also a business owner. So what you need to be able to do is make it easy for people to deal with you. If that means just SMS, if it means booking through the website, I don't take phone calls. I've had to make a decision on that because of the 30 phone calls I receive each day, 28 of them are spam calls that I don't seem to be able to stop. So what I've got to do is make it so that people can approach me in the easiest way possible online, so I still get those inquiries coming through, and it's working. You've also got to make it sound worthwhile. You've got to update your marketing in order to show why you're now worth the extra money, why you're now worth the premium package, why you're now worth more than you were before. So that means you may need to clarify your branding, clarify your message, clarify what it is that you now do that's so special. Because Virgin had to do it. They opened up a bunch of lounges at airports. They made their branding look better. They made their uniforms look more formal. They made the seats more comfortable and the color scheme a lot more premium and upmarket. So they did that in order to make it feel worthwhile for you to pay an extra 20 to 30% on the airfare that you normally would pay. What are you doing to do that? I had to redo my website to make it look more expensive to deal with me, so that then the right people will come through to me, not everyone looking for a cheap deal. So the systems that I now use as we come to the end are the systems that make it really seamless for people to be able to deal with you. Now, number one thing that I use is Calendly. It's very well supported, very well featured, and I don't mind paying $10 a month for it US, because it gives me unlimited events, unlimited calendar connections. I can take payments for Stripe or PayPal. People can order my $150 1-hour consultation through my website, and I never have to ask them for money because they don't get the booking unless they pay for it. So they've got to pay for it up front. No this invoicing or anything like that. I'll send them a receipt, but none of this invoice and transfer my bank stuff. I want the money up front because I know that I do not have the facility to be able to be chasing payments. I don't have an accounts department. I'm guessing you probably don't have an accounts department either. So Calendly is really, really good for that. It's a very effective system. If you want to try it out for free, it's actually, they've got a free version. It's for one kind of event. So you can only take, so you can't have like, you know, this kind of consult, this kind of consult, this kind of consult, only one. And one connection through to a calendar, either an Microsoft 365 and Google Calendar are the two things you can connect through to. I think they also do through to iCal, which is the Apple Calendar as well. And the payments are connected up through either Stripe or through PayPal. So if you've got an account with either or both of those, you can offer both or offer one, doesn't really matter. You get paid, and then the booking comes through to your calendar, and it's all booked and all ready to go. It also connects up like you did with the system that books your one-to-ones on this particular program that you're on now, books in things like the Skype call, all the sort of stuff you need it to do. Simplybook.me is a really popular one with sole traders because it gives you multiple users and it is free to start, but it will give you only 50 bookings for free. After that, you're going to have to pay for it. So, but it does have paid versions that connect you through to Stripe and PayPal, so you can get paid up front as well. Lots of different interfaces and things. You can get a button that goes through Facebook and Instagram. You've got widgets that go on your website. You've got widgets that go on your email. You've got a booking page you can actually use to have all that. So it's actually a really very well integrated program, but at the free version, you're not going to get all of those integrations. Square Appointments is a relatively new arrival, but it's a great one because you get the one user, which is you. Payments are included at a 1.9% credit card payment rate, which is pretty good, actually. 1.9% means that you're not actually necessarily paying for the payment to happen, except for just the credit card processing fee through Square. So that's included. So you don't have to pay for that. Now you might need to start up a Square account, which is natural. Of course, you would need to start up an account with them, but you might also need to, if you're working, say, a market stall and you've got a physical point of presence, you may have to buy the little Square card reader that allows you to get then a cheaper rate. So the 1.9% is the cheaper rate. If it's 1.9% is the higher rate. 1.6% is what it is if someone is paying using your card reader, so it validates it. So that's what it's called, a no card present payment, as opposed to having the card and go beep, and it takes it actually validates that card's there. It includes, and this is really good too, a basic customer relationship management system. So you'll have the history of the customer in there. You can take notes, have updated notes in there. You can schedule onto one calendar. At the moment, Square is only connected up to Google Calendar. So it won't work with Outlook or Microsoft, just with Google Calendar only. Really good product though, and I've got some a couple of friends in business who use Square both in person and through their websites to take bookings, and they absolutely love it. They think it's the best thing ever. Timify is one of my new favorites. It is free to start, unlimited bookings. You can have unlimited different versions of services. So you can have 15 different kinds of things that people can book for, and you can use those. And it connects through the payment providers in the free version. So you connect through to Stripe and PayPal in the free version. The problem is though, it doesn't sync to your calendars. So unless you have the paid version. So the paid version will start to get you synced to Google and to Microsoft 365, but it does also in the paid versions have a customer history. So a bit like a CRM, I suppose, and it allows you to do group bookings. So you can say this group is for 10 people. There's now, you can book these 2 people because there's now 6 left. You booked, okay, now there's only 4 places left. So it's good for classes, that kind of thing, if you're doing that. What I personally use is a combination of Calendly with my Google Calendar. For another government program I work on, I use Microsoft Bookings, which plugs into my Office 365 with them, which then also points into my Google. I got a really complex setup because I've got lots of different directions that bookings are coming in from different programs and of course from my own properties. And another one I call Novo Call. Novo Call Time Sync is like Calendly. It allows you to sync up with your calendar. The difference it does have is one little feature, or two really. The first thing is that it's not a monthly subscription. You pay it for once. I think it's $39 US. Pay for it once, and you never have to pay for it again. So Novo Call Time Sync, it's called. And the second feature of it is it allows me to put qualifying questions in front of it. So the first qualifying question I make is because a great deal of my traffic to my website comes from America and from Indonesia and Singapore. So what I need to put in front of that is if you want at the moment, if you want to be able to access me through a 15-minute discovery call, I can only do that at the moment in Australia and New Zealand, Indonesia and Singapore because of time differences. I can't do that to Americans. I can't do that with people in Africa or in Europe because they're way out of my time zone. So I qualify them by saying, if you answer no to this, it has a friendly message that comes, at this stage, our services are not available in your country. Or if they go, yes, I'm in one of these countries, it then lets them go and then book an available time with me. It doesn't accept payments as yet, but it will at some point accept payments. But these, I only ever use Novo Call for my free discovery calls. I don't use it for all my paid stuff. That's all done through Calendly. So thank you so much for joining me. As I said, my name is Dante St James. You can get in contact with me after this through my email address, dante@clickstarter.com.au. Through LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, please feel free to stalk away. I'm very happy to chat to people on those. I would suggest probably follow me on LinkedIn. All my best stuff's over there, and I'm much more active there than the other ones, even if I may happen to work for Facebook as a trainer. I still, as a business-to-business entity, I still spend most of my time on LinkedIn. But I do thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you had a really great day. Hopefully you're not in lockdown where you happen to be, like I am for the next 3 days. But please do stay safe, be good to your families, be good to each other, and I hope to see you in the next one of these.